No, Mom, I already told you. I don't need the rash cream. It's gone. I don't need it. Don't send it to set. I don't care. Bye. Hi, welcome to our video on social psychology. Today we're going to learn all about the influence of society on the individual. We will learn about attribution, conformity, obedience, group behavior, prejudice, discrimination, aggression, attraction, altruism, conflict, and peacemaking. Let's get started. As we know for ourselves, seldom do we act the same in every situation. Usually, there's some sort of context that may modify our behavior in certain situations. But when we see somebody acting as they are, we more often than not attribute this to their disposition, their personality, as opposed to their situation. This is called the fundamental attribution error. Take, for example, the case of aggression. Aggression, any sort of physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt or destroy, is not completely influenced by a person's disposition. While it's true that predisposition plays some influence on aggressive behavior, it's just as likely, if not more likely, that it's due to a person's neuroactivity or their biochemical activity. At the moment, there might be something going on with that person's brain, or they may just be affected by presence of alcohol or testosterone in their bloodstream. It might even be the media a person has seen that sets a social script for them to follow. Thanks, Think Balloon! One may come to find that the situation has more of an effect on behavior than the disposition. The situation of being in a group, for example, can do many things, like when you and your homies go beat up children. Right? Do you ever get in those situations where you know everyone's doing something wrong, but you don't want to go out of your way to correct everyone on doing it? This is called conformity, and it's more influential than you think. In studies where actors unanimously pick a wrong answer before the participant more often than not ends up going along with the group. This conformity is perceived to come from a desire for connection, empathy, and to fit in. One is likely to conform if... Hey, can I get the line? Oh. Thanks. One is likely to conform if they feel insecure. They are among a large group. This group is in consensus before reaching them. This group is viewed positively. They haven't had a prior commitment to their choice. They are being observed. They come from a culture in which conformity is the norm. They are a conformist person by nature, or if they desire to be accurate, they will listen to people more. Thanks! Now take your script back. When in groups, social facilitation, which is improved performance in groups, and social loafing, which is reduced performance in groups, tend to appear. Whether a group does better or worse depends on if each individual feels aroused or anonymous in the group. When they feel aroused, the individual performance tends to increase, and so does the group's performance. If they feel anonymous, there's a diffusion of responsibility in the group and causes the group's performance to decrease. The diffusion of responsibility and social loafing is one of the reasons why the bystander effect exists. People generally help out if the following events happen. 1. They see an incident. 2. They interpret it as an emergency. And 3. They assume responsibility for it. Going back to group behavior, there are situations where an individual can feel both aroused and anonymous. This is known as de-individuation. De-individuation can be somewhat like a double-edged sword, kind of like my katana that I have. While it can lead to positive phenomena like protests, it can also lead to negative phenomena like bullying and riots. Other negative effects of being in groups are groupthink and polarization, with polarization being especially harmful. In kinships and groups of similar mind, the most prevalent beliefs become amplified. Kind of like when I yell, "Ah!" This is especially dangerous when two sides are fighting with each other. Over time, these two groups may hold more and more amplified views of each other that demonize the other group. These mirror image perceptions often feed into a cycle of hostility, also known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. In addition, these hostilities are fed by ignorance and prejudice. When in-groups and out-groups don't commonly interact with each other, each group tends to form their own in-group bias. Some groups may be biased enough to exhibit the other race effect, which means they can hardly differentiate between other people of different races. Groups also tend to justify prejudice with the just world phenomenon, a base assumption that good is rewarded and bad is punished, when this may not necessarily be the case. How these prejudices also form is, in addition to perpetuated indoctrination, stereotypes formed by the brain in the case of ignorance paint a certain group of people with broad strokes. In the theme of conflict, The idea of obedience is also explorable in the whole concept of social psychology. Imagine being a soldier on the battlefield. There's a lot about which you don't know, and you're in no position of power to argue against anyone. So what can you do in a situation where your orders conflict with your moral views? It's not like it was your fault these things happened. They were your orders. You had to follow them. Stanley Milgram knew that people commonly swayed under social pressure, but he wondered, what about plain commands? In his famous experiments where a participant was compelled by an authoritative researcher to shock someone, Milgram found that obedience is highest for a person when they are tangibly and physically near a perceived authority. The experiment that they are taking place in is in a prestigious context like Harvard or Yale. The person that they are being forced to harm are depersonalized or at a distance, and where there are no role models for defiance. But most people would agree we ought to avoid violence. Rather than perpetuate hate, we need to spread peace. With groups that have such a distaste for each other, something as minuscule as even putting them together can reduce tensions. According to one study, friendly contact between black and white people improved attitudes not only towards one another, but also toward other outgroups. But sometimes, mere contact is not enough, and fostering cooperation between two groups that share a mutual distaste may be required. In the Robbers Cave experiment, two groups of children who rivaled and disliked each other had, over time, with many different situations that required cooperation, come to bond. And when even communication becomes infeasible, acts of reconciliation are largely beneficial in diffusing hatred. For example, during the Cold War, President Kennedy's actions of stopping atmospheric nuclear tests proved to be the small reconciliatory act that snowballed into the 1963 Atmospheric Test Ban Treaty between the US and Soviet Russia. Can anybody give me a girlfriend? Social psychology is also beneficial in explaining the nuances behind attraction. Oh boy. For example, the main factors behind becoming enamored with someone are one's proximity to them due to their mere exposure effect, their physical attractiveness in one's own terms, their social standing, their similarity of attitude and interest to one's own, and the reciprocation of feelings of attraction. Social psychology can also explain the progress of a relationship over time. Typically, a relationship starts out with passionate love, plain arousal. That arousal, in fact, is very predictable and manipulatable. Several studies show that men who are more aroused, be in terms of erotic arousal or physical arousal or emotional arousal, are more attracted to a woman they meet than those who aren't aroused. But when a relationship progresses further, passionate love switches into compassionate love. Deep affection and attachment. Must be nice! A compassionate, gratifying, enduring relationship is best maintained by equity and self-disclosure. It is important to give to your relationship and equally as important to receive from it. In addition, revealing details about oneself for the sake of intimacy is essential. So you see, social psychology is very helpful in examining a lot of things that affect our lives. This video was written by Caleb Chadwick, filmed and edited by Carlos Guerrero, and stars Ingram, Hodges, and myself, Jacob Bethmann. Thank you for watching.